You guys are not doing what we, the millennials, did with regards to the way you do your life.
Buying this makes me feel closer to them, which gives me like a short burst of joy, which I think was a really like good way to explain something that I think is traditionally used to villainize Gen Z.
So last year, they named the Cambridge Dictionary Word of the Year. I just looked it up to make sure I wasn't crazy, and it was parasocial. And I feel like you guys drove this as Gen Z. I call it live action role-playing success. The real flex is being able to buy and do whatever you want and not doing any of it because you don't actually want to.
That's actually my least favorite thing to ever see is like when people just like, well, I'm buying a $10,000 purse. The universe knows that I want $10,000 purses. I do want to be successful, but like not at the expense of myself.
You were made to do more in life than just pay bills and get by. The key to even more success? Get your assets together. With generational growth, we're not just talking about wealth. This is about building your version of an incredible life in every area that truly matters: mind, body, business, and self-care. What if I told you there's a life-changing opportunity to help yourself, even now and especially now? I'm KK Hart, an expert on being both well and wealthy. I've spent decades building what's basically my own investment fund, emphasis on fun, acquiring and growing unique brands with capital, partnerships, and strategic support. I'm here to empower you to go further faster with an anti-hustle, no burnout path to getting richer and more financially fit for investing, acquisition, and growing everything you own. Let's grow.
Gen Z. You guys are something else. Let's talk about it. This is actually great because I have been thinking about some of the trends with regards to what's going on in growth and business in life. Honestly, raising a Gen Alpha female is really challenging. And also being an aunt to a Gen Zer means I'm kind of living in this world where I'm now the old lady. And I love that. But I also really look at you as my expert in this area. And there's a lot that's going on. So in my investment life right now, I would say what's really coming up for me is businesses that are targeting Gen Z, kind of with you guys being in your earning era and your spending era. There's a lot around this that I think anyone who owns a business, who's growing a business, who's acquiring or hoping to be acquired, there's a lot to be thought about with regards to Gen Z. You guys are not doing what we, the millennials, did with regards to the way you do your life. Yeah, look, you're all proud of it too. You're like, and what? But there's something to this that I think would be so great to have a conversation with you about. You know, we talk a lot about generational growth, but I'm not the one with all the answers. And that's where I thought I'd come to you, my Gen Z aficionado, i.e. person today, and just ask your thoughts on kind of what's happening in your world. And also like, where are you putting your energy and your efforts? One thing off the bat that I wasn't expecting is you told me about a celebrity product that you're using. And I have a lot of thoughts about that. I'm actually looking at an acquisition of a celebrity product and it's not looking good. It's not looking like it's going to happen. But so how do you make decisions? Like that would be one thing I want to ask you about was like, how does your generation tend to make decisions on purchases these days, especially because we're living in just this wild west of a world?
I think so. I was actually watching a video about this in the shower, using my shower. It's like a shower holder for your phone that I got off of TikTok Shop. Obviously, actually no. Did I get it off TikTok Shop? It might have been Amazon, and that was because I had a gift card. But anyways, I was watching a video about this where a lot of Gen Z's spending habits are just purely emotional, which I think is something I can relate to and I'm trying to relate less to.
Okay.
But the explanation behind it was kind of that like there are all of these sort of like systems and economic systems specifically that were designed to benefit people who were working in like corporate jobs for a long time, or people who were actively in the workforce for a long time, and like generally just the sort of like bootstrap sort of mentality was like it was rewarded in a time period when Gen Z wasn't necessarily in the workforce. And we don't really see a lot of that now. So I think now that like Gen Z is matured into their spending era, it's like, well, what can I spend on that makes me feel the ownership that I am craving? And that's not like a condo or a house or even like investing in like maybe like a 401k or a Roth IRA or something like that, because the market is so all over the place. And also most of us don't know what the market is.
Sure.
So it's like Amazon hauls, or like this person that I've seen on TV that has great skin also like has this product, and maybe like I like them, and so buying this makes me feel closer to them, which gives me like a short burst of joy, which I think was a really like good way to explain something that I think is traditionally used to villainize Gen Z.
You know, this is so interesting. You've hit two or three things that I'm like, oh, I've been hearing about this. You know, I live literally under a rock these days. And then every once in a while I crawl out. And what I find is that the world has changed so much that like I really lean on what's relevant in my daughter's middle school and what you share with me and, you know, what my husband and I talk about, because I really love this quiet life that I'm living, but also I need to always stay current with the businesses and with the growth endeavors that I do. And this was one that you just kind of really put together so succinctly. So last year, they named the Cambridge Dictionary Word of the Year. I just looked it up to make sure I wasn't crazy, and it was parasocial. And
yeah.
And so what's interesting is I feel like you guys drove this as Gen Z, this idea of the parasocial relationship and the closeness. And we learned this even going to Create and Cultivate Festival last year, like the amount of people who are just like there because one of their favorite creators were there and they just wanted to like be in the room with them, hopefully get a selfie, was so interesting to me, particularly because that was never something that I spent a lot of time on growing up. Like we didn't have aspirational characters like that as millennials, to be fair. We didn't really look at the next generation up and be like, wow, you guys are amazing. And we also didn't look at each other that way until very recently. So with you talking about this idea of like, well, listen, the house may not be it. And that's something we talked about really clearly in the docuseries is like, hey man, that's a big jump from like, I got my credit score good to like, let's buy a house.
Yeah.
It also reminds me of these, what we consider like tiny luxuries or everyday luxuries that really is where you guys have your focus right now.
Yeah. I think another thing that I've been thinking about recently is like the rise of individualism versus like community. And I think for me, like I am sort of a strange Gen Zer in the way that like I wasn't really on the internet chronically until like maybe my early 20s. So like a lot of that early internet stan culture didn't really influence me a lot. Like I got the big ones like Justin Bieber and like tangentially One Direction, or like the ones that were so in your face you could not get away from them anywhere.
Yeah.
But, like, the sort of experiencing a parasocial relationship for me, I think didn't really become a thing until after my frontal lobe had fully formed. So it didn't feel the same as like being a teenager and being like feeling like your favorite YouTube star was like your best friend. And I think the way that individualism has sort of skyrocketed pinpoints a consumer like me now more than it did back then, because like, you know, I won't think to call a friend to drive me to the airport. I'll just like get an Uber. And so like now it's not relying on these like social connections in order for you to buy into it. It's just like offering convenience. And so I think like now it's two-pronged. Like it's not just like, oh, like you have this connection to this person and this person is saying that you should have this lifestyle or have this product or live in this space or have this aesthetic. But it's like, okay, maybe you don't buy into the whole like social aspect of it. That's fine. Don't you want Burger King at your door in 10 minutes? Don't you want to like not have to rely on your friend's schedule in order to like get somewhere on time? Which like that is isolating in a different way. And I think a far more enticing than like, don't you want to feel connected to this person behind a screen? Because that's not going to get everyone.
So does that mean what you're saying is you're good with isolating? Like you love the individual?
Oh,
Oh.
I don't like it, but I think that internet drove Gen Z's culture in a way that maybe wasn't as deeply rooted in millennial. I'm also like, I'm elder Gen Z. I am the first year of Gen Z. So I think I kind of got a little bit of both. Like I remember a time when there wasn't Amazon or there wasn't YouTube, or like when the first iPod came out. Whereas like someone who's maybe like 2018, 17 doesn't remember that. And so I think like for me, it's sort of like an awakening of like, wait, life didn't actually used to be like this. Like I remember like at least having to call a cab to get to the airport, at least like get on the phone with someone. and sort of realizing that like the isolation that we all feel collectively as a generation isn't like purely just because like we are all suffering, or it is kind of like because we all are suffering from like acute levels of anxiety or depression in some way. Where did that start? And I think a lot of where it started was the isolation that was bred from internet culture that we are now just realizing has seeped into like how we go about our everyday lives.
Yeah. So I'd love to lean in on that and maybe ask you personally then, because I see this much more externally than internally, right? So I'm really learning from you here. My concerns have been kind of valid for a while, which is like, you guys had a really rough start to adult life. And now on top of that, you had a very interesting young life in which, you know, when you before your brain was fully formed, there was so much being thrown at you with regards to the internet. Like, do you identify with being lonely and with that idea of like needing to, I guess, needing to figure out other ways to feel good about yourself by getting off screen? Like, do you feel like that's part of your future or what you're thinking about for goals? Or do you feel like this is just how we became who we are and I'm just navigating who I am?
Yeah, I think my take on this is a little bit less black and white. Like I'm not all in on the internet, but I also don't think that removing myself from it completely would solve anything. If anything, like it would just make it harder to connect to people my age.
Sure.
So I think like I was just sort of brainstorming what I think a remedy for this like isolating experience of having the internet thrown in your face for your entire like uh impressionable life would be. And I really think that like it's hobbies. Like I don't think it's getting offline completely, but I think like finding people and things that you can do that don't involve a screen, that involve like connection to a real life person. And then like if the way to find those people is the internet, that's fine. Or if like you see like a meme or like you're both on the same like side of TikTok, you can talk about that. I think that like the internet does have the ability to help us connect with others easily, but like it just like with everything else, like just in moderation and in relationship to something else that isn't just doom scrolling.
This is so crazy because, as usual, I won't speak for all millennials or other millennials, but for me, it's like I want a black or white thought process. And you're like, there are shades of gray. And that is so incredibly clear between our generational differences, where that's so thoughtful. And also, like, to be fair, we didn't have a huge plan for what we wanted to talk about today, but you've hit all of the things I want to talk about in just a few minutes. Because the thing I'm always thinking about, you know, I'm too old, right? Like I'm too old to be looking at things for fun anymore. It's like either what am I doing to help my kids? What am I doing to grow my marriage and my relationships? What are we doing for the bottom line? And so interestingly, this has been coming up more and more, which is all the things we're talking about. I'm so far removed, if I'm honest, that I don't have a great personal stake in it unless I go to you, unless I go to the daughter or the husband or someone else with a different opinion. It just, my personal piece has been valued a little too much lately. But I will say, interestingly, I just got approached from a crafting startup to help lead a special purpose vehicle for them. So an investment vehicle to help them to grow. And their whole value proposition is that Gen Z is going back to slower living, crafts, knitting, crocheting. They call them fiber arts, I think. And could you not, the founder is absolutely amazing. She has a background similar to my kids, so we have a lot in common. She is hungry, she is smart, and she's basically building like the anti-Etsy. And what I found what I find so interesting about this is like everything she put in her pitch deck is around like the future and Gen Z and slower living and crafting. And within a few days of like her really pitching me, I met 3 to 4 different Gen Z people who were actually all women. And they were like, hey, let me show you this cool thing I'm doing on TikTok with my crafts. Let me show you this knitting pattern that I just bought. And I was like, you guys are my niece's age. Like, what? You knit? And it was such a thing.
Honestly, I feel like we're seeing a second rise of this, but the first one I was too young to really like fully understand. But I remember in my 6th grade class having to like have teachers be like, okay, it's silent reading time. You cannot knit during this time period, because we were all knitting and crocheting.
What?
And I was like, like looking back, I was like, why was I 11 trying to figure out how to knit a scarf?
No
But
kidding.
there must have been something going on for, I think, maybe like Gen X at the time that like was similar to what maybe Gen Z is experiencing that was causing them to sort of like want to slow down a bit as well. Because the only way that we as 11-year-olds were picking that up was probably like from our teachers or from our parents, people around us. Because again, we didn't really have like the internet capital I at the time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like influencers, it had to be like the people around us.
Wow.
So I wonder what was going on then, but like something similar definitely was occurring.
Yeah. And I was too young to think about that either, to your point.
Yeah.
I don't remember that as an aunt, but I can genuinely see where this is coming from now. And it's all intertwined. Of course, being like the nerd that I am, I'm like researching like Gen Z fibercraft trends, and like everything that was coming up was from credible sources. But I was like, gosh, could this be real? And within, I mean, I tell you what, days of that pitch, the universe really gives you what you need, because random women were just sharing this with me as they were like telling me about the business that they're growing, or telling me about their big money, desires that they had. And what was interesting to me is the throughput was the same. It's like one gal said, I met her at like a founder funder event in New York when I was there last month. And she's like, I do this to get through New York winters where like the sun goes down at 4 and it's lonely and like it's cuffing season and ain't no one to cuff. So that was interesting. And then another gal was like, super connector. She knows everybody. She's kind of part of the founding team on the startup. And same thing. She was like, yeah, I mean, this is just like what I do for fun. And I follow these people and I do these things. And then there's these things called stitch ups where you can get together, and like in the city, there's tons of them. And my mind was just like racing from like, of course, like the investment aspect of things. But also I was like, wow, I can really see where this can take off because of the 3-4 things we just talked about. Between being able to have parasocial relationships means she had I wish I could remember if it was knitting or crochet. She had a knitting or crochet influencer that she follows. Yeah, see, you're not shocked.
Yeah.
Wow. And she was like scrolling through this girl's stuff. She knows everything about her. Sometimes she goes on, like, I forgot there's like a phrase she used where you get on there and you just kind of stitch alongside her, or you can see I'm so not aware of this thing. Like you do it alongside them in like a long form video. Wow.
People have stuff like that. Like that's a practical one. But there are people who like will make videos of them like cleaning their house or cleaning their apartment, and they'll be like, clean with me.
Yes.
Like if you need like someone to clean with and you don't have a physical person, I will clean my room alongside you.
Gosh, but see, now I've heard about this, the comfort creator.
Yeah.
I'm going to go all rational brain, and then I'm going to ask your thoughts, which is probably going to be less rational brain. To me, that sounds really concerning. It means we're pushing ourselves to a place where we're online even more for things that really should be personal. But I also understand like everyone's life isn't that they're partnered and have support at home, or that they're close to friends and family. So for me, I always think, gosh, that makes me really sad. And I do live far away from all of my friends and family, with the exception of my husband and kids. So for me, it is hard, but I would have never thought to reach for that. And even as I'm hearing about it, I'm like, yeah, that may not be me, yet your generation is really thriving and leaning into all of this.
Yeah. I feel both things. Like I do think that it feels sad to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's not content that I reach for the purposes that it's intended. Like I might throw it on in the background for something, or like it might come across my page as I'm like falling asleep and it's calming. So I watch it. But I don't think I've ever felt like, oh, I really need a person here to like do this thing alongside. I will pull up like X content creator and watch their video meant for that. Now, I do know that I forget what the name is for this like specific tool that works for people with like ADHD. Who, like, it's almost like parallel play, where like they need someone there to be like an accountability partner in order for them to actually get work done.
Yeah.
It can be a helpful tool for people who maybe don't have access to community to still get the benefits of that. But for me, then where I think is like, okay, but if you have that so efficiently, why would you ever take the time it requires to build a community? And so that's why I'm like, I think it can be a useful startup in order to like just get your affairs in order without going through the steps of like building authentic connection.
Yeah.
But it can't stop there. When it stops there, I think is when it gets really like sad and troublesome.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's actually, so to be fair, I am really excited. I've got a meeting coming up with them in a couple of days about this startup because they're actually leveraging the experiences. To your point, while it's a digital platform, think of it like an anti-Etsy. They are also doubling down on these events and experiences because they believe that that's like, what do they call it? The trust deficit that we're experiencing right now. It'll attract people who are like, yeah, I don't trust anything I see on the internet anymore with the age of AI. But then there's a throughput with having a digital way to sell their stuff, get patterns, all the things that they talked about. So purely from a capitalistic perspective, I'm like, well, this is interesting. But then too, I've watched how knitting and crocheting has helped my kids and helped them overcome trauma and helping them overcome trauma. And then I think about kind of going through a lot this last month or so, losing a friend, and like, I'm always doing something with my body and with my hands, but the average person is not. So I do see where it's like the conglomerate of all of this is, I think if we're growing businesses well, then we're really thinking about people instead of just trends. And what I see is we really need to start thinking about, as business owners, as founders, as creators, it's like, where are the habits right now and where are they headed? And I feel like your generation is really the one that we need to focus on, because you guys are not just in your spending era, you're also kind of the most active digitally. You're the ones who are, for lack of a better way of saying it, I think you're the most important to focus on in this next decade, because you're really driving all behaviors right now, digital and in real life. And so my part in learning more about this is, is twofold, right? I have a Gen Z niece, I've got a Gen Alpha kid, another Gen Alpha kid, and then I'm looking at this intersection of my personal and professional life. And even some of the women I've been really helping and mentoring lately, they're elder Gen Z and they're young millennials, and they're kind of fitting into this mold as well, where I'm like, wow, we have to really think differently about how we approach business. Look, if you're Chanel, you can do whatever the fuck you want, right? If you've got generational money and you don't have to worry about being truly successful and you can look the part, and you don't have to worry about this. But when I think about businesses growing and thriving, right, when I think about the future of commerce, everything I see is that we really need to think about Gen Z spending habits, their personal needs, in order to be more, on top of what's actually happening so that we're not left behind.
Yeah. And I think that like the company you're talking about, that's like the anti-Etsy, where they want to do like in-person things as well as like a digital platform.
Yeah.
I think that's really where Gen Z is leaning towards. And I think that has come along with like the rise of the ordinary person, where it's like platforms like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram have kind of allowed us to make everyday people into tiny celebrities, and then in some cases really big celebrities.
True.
And I think that like that is all sort of led towards us wanting to connect with as many people as possible, but over something that like is tangible. So I think that my favorite moments on the internet are like when people find something in their lives off screen, or maybe like it's a TV show or something. Right now, I just finished, I don't know if you've watched Heated Rivalry, but it's ruining my life.
No, I just heard about it though. I can't remember where.
Yeah. So it's like a huge, it's a show that everyone is into right now, and everyone just finished because the finale just came out and it's a couple weeks away from the finale. So everyone's watched it. And these little gay boys are ruining my life. They're everywhere. But everyone is sort of like fangirling about it. And they're from this fangirling sort of like vibe on the internet, there have become these like hangouts and meetups and clubs that have heated rivalry nights, and bars that will like play the show and like play the soundtrack for the show, and DJs who will include it in their set. And it's making people come out in real life in droves to these places and have this experience together. And then they capture that experience online and they post that, and that like generates more content for people to then consume and then go out. And it's sort of like art imitating life, imitating art, imitating life sort of thing. I think that for me is my favorite moment on the internet, when people all collectively decide like, we really like this and we want to talk about it and discuss it and connect with other people who want to talk about and discuss this thing. And that's when I think the internet is doing like what it's meant to do.
That's interesting. I mean, that makes me think about a couple of things. I mean, one, of all the investments I made in the last year, I would say my favorite by far has been Create and Cultivate, for that reason, is that they really are doing what you're talking about. I just got an investor update from Marina about a month ago. And I always try to send her back a note that's really positive and uplifting. And, it's hard. She's in the trenches. She's the CEO of a massive business, and they did a lot last year, and it's hard to top that this year. And they're already looking at double the size of the festival this year, which is wild. So they have a whole new space and a whole new kind of reimagination of it that I'm excited about. But it really is the investment I'm most bullish about. And the reason for it is, I actually didn't think I would like it as much as I did. Like, I thought, okay, I'm not like a cute content creator girly. So showing up there, I mean, look, I was like, I'm going to bring my person so that I can just have fun with you. And we had a blast.
Yeah.
But we also met people we really enjoyed. And those relationships have come from, like, Janae was on the 1%, our live show, which has done really well. Parasocial Facialist, Heather Nicole, who I did a consult with, amazing gal. She's really trying to grow her skincare device line. So I've been keeping in touch with her. Mel's been traveling all over the world, Kim Kardashian's trainer, but like, we've been texting and keeping in touch. It's been very interesting to see, like, those are notable people that, like, I didn't care to know, but getting to know them that little bit as people in real life, like, I would have never been on their social, period. Yeah. Still wasn't until I met them and, like, got to know them as humans. And that is the thing that even lights me up. Even this little old lady millennial inside, like, that's what got me so excited, is like, now I want to be really intentional. Like, I'm actually trying to get a retailer friend to buy in bulk of Heather Nicole's skincare device, because she actually demoed it on me at festival. I've been talking to Mel about what her goals are, what her dreams are, and figuring out if there's a way that we can collab on that. Like, that in real life experience, I can tell you, quintessentially changed an already good life for better. And that gets me so excited to think about more and more Gen Z becoming the focus of those events. I think about it from a business perspective, yay, but I also think about it from what you're saying, which is like, we need more like that. We need things that are really tangibly meeting the needs of the human, instead of just like, buy another thing and do this spammy, scammy thing on the internet, which is, I mean, both are still prevalent, but I think the more we meet in person, and the more, you told me this thing about Heated Rivalry that really got me going, is like, the more we find ways to make the digital come to life in person, I think that's where we start bridging the gap, so people get what they want and they also get what they need.
Yeah. Like, I think a lot of times people think of, like, where we started this conversation with, like, the internet is isolating, which, like, yes, but the internet can be isolating.
Yeah.
The internet can also be a catalyst for many people that maybe, like, you never would have met otherwise, who
100%.
share big love for this thing that you also share, that maybe, like, people in your everyday life are like, what's that? I don't know what that's about. And then, like, that's fine. You can then talk to other people and find out ways to meet other people who share the same passion as you, which I think it's sort of like, I don't know, maybe it's sort of like bringing job posting energy to, like, social media. To me, what I think of, like, besides like the stan culture of it all, is like, well, where does that thing exist before? And for me in my life, it's like when I'm applying for like roles, like, I send in a video, we both are focused on this one project, and then hopefully that makes me a connection with someone that I never would have met otherwise, and then we get to both collaborate on this thing we're both passionate about. And I think the same could also be said for maybe like LinkedIn or Indeed, where, like, we both have this mutual connection, and then I give you some content, you give me some feedback, we have a conversation, maybe we form a connection. And so I think it's taking that, but on a social level, and then multiplying it, maybe 10, 20 fold, because you're not showing up to a club when you go to a job posting, but it's a similar concept. And so I think, like, the more that we can do that and, like, use the tool of connectivity that the internet can bring to us, and sort of stray away from, like, offering you faux connection. I think that's more of what I look for online.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but so I've had a hard time figuring out, like, what worlds do I belong in? Because for so long I was so behind the scenes, like, for, the last very formative years. And then coming back the way that I did, I mean, first I didn't expect to record our series. I didn't expect to do any of this. And then as I did, I felt more and more motivated. But to your point, where I felt the most energized has been those conversations where, like, hey, who's going to festival? And then you show up and you actually, like, meet the person, get to know them. They walk you over to their friend or this business that they're working with, or they show you the product that they've built. Actually, I don't know if you remember her, Sam from Mindful, cute little blonde that we met who had the amazing nutrition business.
Remember her?
She's in Dubai doing this amazing summit called 500 Global. She's about to start raising. We've been in touch about how I can support that for her. Again, like, saw her business, but got to know her as a person. Like, again, I probably would have stumbled across Mindful because we run in similar circles, health and well-being. But I didn't care about that. I just thought, wow, she's adorable and she's got depth and she's got the Florida connection. So we like had so much in common. Every time we talked, we'd want to talk longer and longer. And I've been kind of catching up with her every other month or so since festival. And again, now I'm so committed to Mindful. Like, I'm excited about it. I've had access to it for a little while now. And it just makes me want to do more. It is less about what is being sold to me or presented to me. And it's more about the depth of meeting needs and having authentic connections with people that I otherwise would not have, other than my tiny little circle of influence that I choose to keep. So I think that's an interesting kind of future promise that companies and brands need to really think about. And I'll just say this, at all budgets, by the way. Like, I often meet people who are at the earlier stage that I can't work with them, or it's too early for me to invest. And what they often say is like, yeah, but I don't have that kind of money. I don't have a 5-figure sum to throw at an experience or at activations at events. And actually, while I know that's true, I also would push back and say, you've got to find a way to turn whatever's good digitally into something in real life, even if it's not your audience. Like, for me, this is new, building an audience of people who are like listening to what I share about investments I'm doing and acquisitions I'm interested in. Like, this is very new for me with regards to like it being our own focus versus just partnering. And so the thing that I've been really focused about for this year is actually partnering, because that's where I believe we're smartest and where I believe we're strongest. And especially, I would say, shifting gears in this season for me, focusing on growth has looked really differently. Like, I feel like I have been so passionate for so long about just putting my head down and getting the work done. And then you really kind of inspired something in me when you came up with the concept around generational growth. Was not fully fleshed out when I had brought it to you, and you hated the name, and I was like, fantastic, tear it apart. And then we came up with this idea, and you really kind of helped me to get here in addition to filming it. And then I lost my first ever best friend, and I really felt so existential because he is a lot like me. We're obsessive about the things we put in and on our bodies. We are, he's multi-hyphenate. I don't know a lot of dudes that I can say that about. He owned many different businesses and many different spaces. He was not interested in being notorious. Like, we just had so much in common. And his sister being our shared person in common that we loved, this one really hurt. And I found myself feeling not just existential. I know I texted that to you one day. I was like, I just feel existential about everything. I don't even know if I can think straight. And at the same time, I do feel purposeful. I don't know how I can hold those two truths, but I feel like, okay, thank God I'm living in my purpose every day at home. Thank God I'm doing exactly what I want to do with my career. I'm really grateful that my vision of growth, I've been living it for a little while now, not as long as I'd like. I'd like to have been doing it from the beginning. But I think in a world where everyone is tired and broke and hurting and going through grief myself for the first time in a really long time, I think I'd love to think about what the purpose of growth really is. Like, for instance, one of the things that I researched that came up when I was looking up, like, what are the trends that are going on right now with regards to Gen Z spending habits and, the future of, honestly, all business with regards to AI just eating some industry's lunch. Here's what I saw. It was so interesting. It said a major factor in Gen Z and millennial is financial future faking. And I about lost my fucking mind, because it is what I see, where like everyone's vision of growth is external. I spoke at a conference right before he died, and this really lovely gal who I've known for a while, we did like a little off the cuff consult. And then she asked me the most interesting question, which is like, you mentioned that you can buy and do a lot, but you choose to do less and less. She's like, so what do you do for clothes? And I looked down and was like, girl, this is like 15 years old.
I will say that I think one of the most important lessons that you have imparted on me is to live below your means. Because I think I really have taken that to heart to the
Yeah.
point where when I'm thinking about like budgets or like what I want to spend on rent or what clothes I want to buy or whatever, or where I want to go out to eat. It's always like, okay, what would I buy if I just had like $200 less?
Oh my God. That makes my heart so happy.
And then like eventually that was like, well, what if I just put that $200 in like a savings account and then thought about what I would buy if I had like $400 less. And that way I could just carry that 200 over to the next check. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, the Dollar Tree looks great, guys. Dollar Tree has great stuff. We could just hit up Dollar Tree on our way home. We could get groceries. We could get a shirt. We could get a snack. We could get some plates.
I'm not a budget, right? No, the thing. I'm not a budget.
Like, yes, I do. And I like to keep the money from that actually.
Yeah.
And I think
crazy.
like not a lot of people think that way. And I think like to be fair, like when you live in a late stage capitalist society, nothing is telling you to think that way.
Yeah.
So, like
there's no financial incentive.
Like money should be burning a hole in your pocket and you should just throw it out of business.
Yeah.
And so I think like I don't think it's wrong that people think that way. I just think that like culturally there's not another option given to us.
No. And I feel like, well, let's go all the way. And I feel like women, especially, and women who feel like they're doing something that they're passionate about, particularly in business these days, it's almost like this fake it till you make it energy is back in full swing. I call it live action role playing success. And so sometimes I'm in these rooms and I'm like, I don't think the purse is hiding the fact that you ain't got no real money, girl. You know, and it's really sad because actually, unfortunately, I don't just kind of guess at it. I'm told it. Like everyone knows I'm a really great secret keeper. So when we're talking about their financial positions or, you know, what they want to do with their business, I'm hearing the truth of a lot of situations. And it makes me very, very sad that I can be as loud as I want to be. I'm certainly not as loud as I, should be by all means, but like, it doesn't really matter if you don't realize that that's not the vision of success that you want for yourself. Like I honestly can tell you, I just said this the other day here at home. I said, if I never buy another piece of clothing or purse ever again, I would be so fine because it doesn't define me. And that is the way that I'm able to take as much time as I want off to breathe. That is how, I'm standing there, it's just morbid, but like literally in front of my friend's dead body. And I'm just thinking like, the thing that everyone spoke about at his wake was not about the businesses and the money. And, it was about his character. And that made, I would say, I'd speak for his family, my best friend, and their family. I'm sure that made them feel a lot better than the extra zeros in the bank account. Right. And so, and especially at such a young age, he died at 44. It's like, what are we really thinking is actually growth? Because I can tell you for sure, accumulation of things, not growth. I'll even say accumulation of assets, not growth. I've walked away from lots of deals because it's like, this doesn't, it could, but it could not. Right. And so I just wonder if we're really chasing the thing we really want, or are we chasing the thing that looks like what we want so that we can, fit in and feel more like everyone else. And I will say it's a harder road. It's a path. I can't imagine for you, it's a path less traveled if you don't have a partner that gets it or friends that are like, yeah, I'm good with that. But it is the most freeing path. And that's actually what I told the scouts, I was like, to be honest with you, the real flex is being able to buy and do whatever you want and not doing any of it because you don't actually want to. And it really blew her mind. Like if I could, the emoji, like her mind jumped outside of her skull, came back down. She was wearing like a $15,000 Chanel jacket and was like, okay, I need to really think some things through in life because I'm not in a financial place. And yet I am pursuing and exuding this idea of luxury and wealth, thinking it's going to bring me more in the universe. It's going to manifest it for me like we do in assets under management, right?
That's actually my least favorite thing to ever see is like when people just like, they're like, oh, well, I'm buying a $10,000 purse that the universe knows that I want $10,000 purses. And it's like, oh, okay. But what if you just like, if you have $10,000 to put somewhere, why don't you like save it or invest it? Or I don't like, if you want to buy something, maybe like a car, like something useful. You know what I mean? Like,
Don't buy something that makes you an ass, get yourself an ass. But that's honestly, none of that stuff really contributes to joy. I've been looking at a lot of things with regards to financial setting up for the future. That has different ways of, working through people. For me, I just keep asking, like, tell me your wishes, put it in a Google Doc, because I'm psychotic like that, as you know. And so for me, I keep coming up with like, okay, let me just make sure like all that stuff is in order here at home as well. And for all the businesses, one of the hardest things is that because he died so suddenly and so young, none of that was in order. And what I keep coming back to, that's really like, that is going to hurt for years.
Yeah.
Beyond just the personal. And what I keep coming back to is this idea of like, what are the things that really matter? Like, what's the real impact? What is the thing, if I'm buying it, if I'm investing in it, like, where will this actually grow me beyond just my bottom line? And actually the answer is very little. But we live in a world where like consumer culture means that you've got to fabricate your level of success and make it look a certain way, because that's what we've decided that wealth looks like. Wealth doesn't look quiet in my normal room, not with a, penthouse behind me thought process. It's got to be about like, put it out there, rent the space, make it look a certain way, wear the outfit. And I love a nice outfit. Sure. In theory, I used to. But I think there's just something to be said for what real growth is. And actually the greatest flex of my, I would say, year was being able to just go quiet for a little bit and grieve and think about my friend and be there for them and get on a plane and be at the wake. And I think that's just a purpose that until you sadly ever have to go through it and then realize you don't have that luxury, it's just an amazing one. And I wish more people had it. I wish more people had their finances set up. Like, I even thought about this, T, like, how was I able to get here so young? And it's not because the money is so exciting. It was honestly because I was like, I really needed to do this. I needed to do it my way. I've never lost a best friend. And so horrifically. And so without being ready in any way. And the true answer makes me no additional money. Compound interest from a young age. Buy less. Live underneath your means as far as you're willing to go.
Yeah.
JP Morgan ain't sponsoring this shit. You know what I mean? Nordstrom's not running an ad on this motherfucker. You know what I mean? But that is how I was able to do it. Especially we look at our finances every month. So like Matt and I are constantly thinking about this. It's like, how did this happen? And why doesn't it happen as much for others? And it is always the spending. It's always the debt. It's always the consumer stuff, the niceties in life, the little treats. And then even with people who've made a lot, the next thing I've heard about is like, then it becomes a new standard where like, now we need to fly private and now we need to have multiple homes. And like, you start peeling back those layers and like, that's just not even a life that I want. It has nothing to do with the flex, it's weird.
Yeah. And I also think that like, going back to something that you said about like faking it online or like faking it in person so that like you feel this sense of accomplishment that like you don't have. I think I also see that a lot specifically in the entertainment industry. Like people who I know are kind of like working on the same level of films as me, but like posting about it a lot more as if they weren't. So like being like, oh, I just got an audition request. And it's like, no, you applied to something on Backstage and then they asked you to like send a self-tape. Like it's not exactly the same thing. You're just phrasing it in a different way. And it's like, I respect that hustle. I respect that you're cultivating this sort of personality online so that maybe like an agent or a casting director or a director sees you and thinks that you're a more serious actor than maybe like you are right now. So I get that. It just to me feels a little inauthentic to present myself in that way. Whereas maybe to them, they're like, well, I'm presenting myself in the way that like I want to be perceived and the place I want to go, kind of like just for the job you want, the job you have sort of vibe. And I think that microcosm sort of happens in a lot of cultural aspects, specifically with people. And so I think that like I see a lot of times like my friends who like they're the only things they do are like they work, they go home, they work, they go home, they work, they go home, and yet they're always broke. And I'm like, what?
How? Right.
I'm working on the weekends only, and like I'm not always broke. So how are you always in financial ruin? And then if they are willing to sort of open up to me in that way, it is always sort of like, well, they're living beyond what they can afford, maybe because like they found themselves in a rough circumstance, or they lost a roommate, or because they just like, they're so depressed by their job that they're going out to TJ Maxx every week and spending like $200. Whatever it is, it's always like something external is influencing something internal that's then influencing someone's spending habits.
None, you better say that 3 times. That's my point. It's like we wonder why we're lonely and we're connected. It's like, that's not real. Look, what you just described from a generational perspective, from like a life stage perspective, and also like I see it on my side and with this like women in business cohort, which is why I really was excited to do assets under management. It's like, what are you guys doing? It's like everything is a freaking show moment. Everything is a branded opportunity. It's why people are so burnt out on social. It's why, like, instead of just like trying to be more authentic, I just won't post until I'm authentic. Like, you'll see 7 posts in a day and then you'll see nothing for a year. Like, I don't care, because that is why, that you said it so eloquently too, like that mismatch of what's internal and external. It is not getting you better. It is not making you more money. It is not bringing home the bag. It is making you broker, sicker, and less happy with the life you're living. It is such a mismatch, reality versus fantasy. And like, we can call it brand building, or we can just call it what it is, a lie.
Yes.
It's not real. And it really, I mean, this gets kind of touchy, but like, I am tired of seeing investment businesses that are like raising, and then I see what they're really doing behind the scenes. And I'm like, this is not a company that's investable. This is not a brand that's going anywhere. You are live action role playing a business owner. Like, shut it down, go get a job. Good luck to you. I'm sure you'll be better off. But like, I'm seeing that all the time as well. And it's really concerning, because it's like, if the standard continues to climb for what, does well, let's say on social, and all of it is fabricated, then what do we say about people who want to do the right thing and feel weird about it, or feel uncomfortable, or feel like they're not good enough, when we keep saying just be authentic and then we're authentically lying?
Yeah.
I mean, what is that?
Yeah. And I also feel like there's also, specifically with businesses and corporations, there's a lack of transparency that like maybe like an everyday person doesn't have to see that business is lying. And then when an individual becomes a business, then like it becomes even more of like a screen of like, well, I am now a business entity and also an influencer. And so like, you can't see that I'm not doing well because my house is actually a set, but you also can't see that I'm not doing well because like my business is performing that I'm doing well. Yeah. So it's like, it becomes twofold. And I think that like, we don't like, in the same vein as like, we don't really have access to the information. We as in like regular like Gen Z, lay people in general, don't really know how to get the access to information. Peel back the curtain on businesses. We don't have the access to information to like peel back the curtain on individuals as well. Like, some people are cyber stalkers and they can get that info, but I think most people just sort of believe what they see because there's no other option to. Like, the same way that I know that some people are faking what they're posting online is because I know them in real life. But if you don't know them in real life, you don't know that.
That's right. And that kind of leads me to the last thing that I know we wanted to at least touch on, which is like, let me say this. I love growth. I think that growth is so important personally and professionally. It's obviously not just part of the brand that I am associated with, right? It is actually how I became who I am. Came from nothing, did things, grew in very, unconventional ways. But what we're talking about here, this is not growth. This is literally the opposite of what I would say contributes to economic success and financial success, personal well-being, wellness. None of that really connects. And so if our only way of being successful is to pretend and to, build this idea of something and hope it will come, it's giving Theranos. Like, it's giving like, we're faking till we make an entire business, which is against the law, an entire life, which should make you feel icky. And many of us, if we're doing that, we need to really think about how we're going to get to the level of growth we want by doing that. It's not working. If it was working, you wouldn't feel so badly, no matter how much the bottom line contributes to your day to day. So I don't know. When I think about growing generational growth, this is where I've been excited and passionate, but also I would say not stuck, but thoughtful. because I know there's a number of different things we could do next, right? We can go out and get sponsorships and have brands. And by the way, that's the only way like I've done a ton of research on this, even with notable creator clients, like the way everyone's paying their bills is brand sponsorships.
Oh my God. Yeah. And also, I also just learned a little bit about this through, you know, the tripod, you know, Try Guys.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Let me take it.
No, I was convinced for like 2 seconds. So the Try Guys, they're kind of this like internet sensation. They came from BuzzFeed and now they have their own production house called Second Try. And they have a podcast that they actually recently just ended called The Tripod. And so I just learned a lot about how podcasts make money from them being really transparent about like, this is why our podcast is ending. And it's because it wasn't making any money. And it wasn't making any money because the agency that they worked with to get their branded sponsorships was bought by ate by a bigger shark, essentially.
A good old acquisition.
Yes. And then that shark was like kind of forgot about the little LLCs at the bottom. And so then they didn't get a lot of their like sponsorships that they were supposed to get. And then they wanted to move to work with another like smaller company so that they could, you know, have more connection with that. And then that company also got acquired. And so then the way that their contracts worked is that like it took like a couple of years or a few months or whatever, like a long amount of time to negotiate those contracts. And so then they had to keep starting over. And then all of a sudden their podcast wasn't profitable for like 2 years. And then they're like, this just isn't. Then they like got another company that maybe could like help them, but then they'd have to start their contracts over. And they're like, this just like isn't worth it anymore. And so I like talking about like peeling back the curtain on businesses. There's not a lot of businesses sharing that sort of information with you, but that was very helpful for me to hear as someone who is involved with this podcast, and also to just like know in general, like how those things work so that like, you know, I can be a more informed consumer and also maybe understand why like maybe this podcast is promoting this product that I thought like they didn't particularly align with. They picked the product. Their agent picked that product.
That's right.
And they have to promote it to like make money.
That's right. And that's how the networks work. That's why I walked away from that first network that I was excited about, was like the idea around this. And like, I get that big check, you know, 6-figure, 7-figure energy coming from sponsorships. But, you know, I think the first time I ever talked about it was last month at this Art Basel event that I spoke at. And side note, I met a really number of amazing women who are doing really unique things in business from that event. So like, I'm grateful that in that moment when I decided to be really honest and authentic about this, it actually opened up a whole new conversation that now they've asked me to become an advisor in residence to their entire group. But what was so interesting to me is when I shared that, a lot of people came up to me afterwards and was like, I'm so glad you said that, because I have been trying to figure out, racking my brain to figure out how to fucking afford this, how thousands of dollars are just being like paid for by other people. And for a lot of people, you know, I've been very lucky that I can finance it myself. I call it go fund yourself, right? And so my whole purpose around this is like, if the financing mechanism is not reliant on someone else or something else, then we can be really authentic and show up as we are and have these great conversations, and then have guest conversations that are not sponsored because they paid for access to that share of voice, but because they're people I genuinely know or have met. But the truth of the matter is, without those massive overpaid, I'm sorry to say it that way, but they are, brand sponsorships, it's almost impossible to cover the cost of production. And, you know, I have an all-female team working on this. You as on-air talent, our video editor, our YouTube experts, since we decided to specialize in YouTube and really go hard on video. Our entire team is women who want to be paid fairly, that want to do what they want to do. And so that ain't cheap. And it's not cheaper when you get sold out by a brand. You just kind of sell some of the ethos of what you're trying to do. You sell pieces of yourself. And I have no shade towards people who do it and feel good about it. So that's number one. But number two is that thinking about other ways to get our brand out there, to grow. I've had to be really thoughtful around what does that look like. And so every time I do, I feel like partnership is the authentic way, but also my heart-led way of doing so, where it's like, I have my growth operating manual that's like this, it's in final editing. so that I can get it out there and have an affordable way for women to do, this idea of growth at all costs and do the opposite of that and grow the way they want to and grow their way with cash flow 2.0. And then I've got, of course, investment offerings I'm about to lead for the first time and get open access to instead of just behind these closed walls. And then obviously, we love experiences. So I'm thinking about where can we partner and who can we collaborate with that have the ideal client that we want to be in front of to really build our community. And then I really created this, it's really based on me, but think of the critical path of growth. It's a linear calendar. It's a way of looking at your year where you're zoomed all the way out, because I find as much as I love my GCal, in Google, I can't zoom all the way out to the year and see where the cluster of my travel is or the cluster of personal needs are. And so I didn't find a version of that until I came up with the growth calendar and then added the personal professional layer to it. So like all of those things take resource, and all of those things also need distribution. And the hardest thing about this is figuring out the right way to do it, the right partnerships and the right ethos in order to do it well. But I still stand by this concept of like finding a way to do it our way is going to be the best way.
Yeah. And I think that's been most of what you said, like, is how you choose to find success is like,
Yeah,
well, I'm going to do what I'm going to do the way that I want to do it, which I would say is genetic. I think, I think that's a lot of how I think about things as well. And I think like, I also, my favorite celebrities and influencers also have the same sort of ethos. So like I remember in an early Billie Eilish interview, I love Billie Eilish. She was like in an interview with, I think it's Vogue, where she does the same interview like every year, and they ask the same questions, and they like ask her to like respond to her past selves answers to those questions. And one of those, it was like, what do you want to accomplish this year? And she was like, I just want to make what I want to make, when I want to make it, how I want to make it. Which she was like, you wouldn't think that that's like a monumental thing for someone in my position to say, but like that is a harrowing task. And that is what I would like to do, because that's how she would like to find growth and how she would like to find success. And I think that like I also have taken a sort of untraditional path to get to where I am now with my art, where like I didn't just, go straight out of school and then immediately bankrupt myself trying to be a starving artist. It was like, hey, it's not going to work. I have to find something else to support me. And then once I have that support, then I can start making my art in my free time. And also I need to build a schedule where I have free time. So like it took time to build those things to get to what I want to do. And I think that's not the path that most people take, because it's not the one that's like directly in front of them. Not like, oh, I can see my goal across the street. It's like your goal is maybe in another city. Like you got to take some paths to get there.
I will say this is where I believe representation matters. This is really full circle. This is why I came out of stealth to share more, because I do feel like you say it's genetic, but I'm raising a child that's not biologically my own. And kid you not, last night, we were coming up with research on this investment, because I have her doing investment research for me now because she's so smart at 11. And then she got into this rabbit hole on Etsy, and she'd never seen Etsy before. I mean, she's 11. We keep her under a rock with me, just hunkering down. And her eyes lit up and her ADHD went wild. And then she started panicking about all the things she wanted to do on Etsy. And then she started saying like, Mom, I've got to figure out ways to fund myself. Like I actually, if you're going to...
That's crazy. My sister right now also is trying to start an Etsy shop. She also is like, I need to figure out how to start an Etsy shop. I need to figure out what I'm going to make. I need to figure out how I'm going to like get materials. Like, I don't know what it is about an 11-year-old brain right now. You're really zoned in on this particular market.
You've heard it first here. Generation Alpha is going to be, I think, the entrepreneurial generation of all of our dreams. Because to your point, they're coming up in a world that's so different than even you were raised in, right? Yeah. And so I'm trying to represent both access and influence and accountability, right, to my daughter, but I'm also trying to influence her in these ways of, slower living and living underneath your means. And what I'm finding is, and I'm like a bit of a jerk about it right now. So every time she wants to like do a bedazzle business, I'm like, okay, well, if I buy the bedazzles, what % are you cutting me in for COGS, for cost of goods? And then she's like, well, mommy, I don't want to give you anything. And I'm like, well, then I guess you don't want any goods, like, guess you can't build your business. And like, I'm being exceptionally irritating about it. You probably understand it more than anybody else in the world. Like, it frustrates her, which I love because I want her to get to that, like, I'm going to fund myself. And then last night, kid you not, she was just going on and on about how she's got to figure out Etsy because now she's found a way to fund herself without relying on me and my, gosh, I wish I could remember what she said, like my aggressive funding tactics. And I was like, this is a dream. Like, this is what I want her to be focusing on, Fuck the fundamentals.
The thing that I think is always underestimated about the younger generations because of their connection to the internet is that, like, people view like internet culture and like business culture as like diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Like, the foundation of all good business is creativity. And when you start on the internet and you're playing like games like Minecraft or with Roblox or like all these sort of things that engage you in a creative way, but like with technology, you sort of have this foundation that like someone my age or older doesn't even have. And that, I think, is a really good like building block for making something creative and sellable and marketable to an audience that is being built around you in your generation and has been built like above you in the generation that predecessed you.
So maybe the future of growth, it is more collaborative yet autonomous. You know what I mean? It's like you do it yourself to a point, but then you bring everyone else along for the ride.
Yes.
And it's also kind of more thoughtful because I mean, like, to be fair, like, I am a complete jerk when I'm trying to like negotiate, equity percentage from my daughter, but it's because I want her to see like it actually has to come from you, or else you are giving something up. Like, going back to the brand deal that I love to hate on right now, it's like they own you. They will tell you what to say, how to say it. They'll make you retake it 7 times until it's perfect. And all that's fine if you believe in it, but most people aren't. And so I want Generation Alpha, I think my hope for them is that they're even better than your generation about knowing their wants and their needs. I've been using this phrase a lot, but like putting their D's on the table, meaning put their do's and don'ts on the table, what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do, what I want, what I don't want. And so I actually am very hopeful, thinking not just about Gen Z and the future of like what commerce looks like today, but to your point, I think what we're really coming up on here is the intersection of like business growth and culture, and like what's happening where in our world. I think generational growth is meant to stand for more than just wealth and more than just hustle. And this is proof that, you can actually have a thought beyond just the basics. So this was exciting. We should do it again. I mean, we only said we do it for 7 months, and I dragged my feet and I said no 8 times. And then I said, my hair won't look good. And then here we are.
And your hair looks great.
Okay, it'll be done soon enough. I'm like behind on all of my things, which I absolutely love, because again, I got to show, especially my kids, like what real authentic grieving looked like. And it did not look like the trend on TikTok. It's like, I actually saw that one. I was like, what the hell is that? I told my kids that I'm grieving my best friend. What? Like, that is not real life. That is not authentic. We need to stop. We're too grown.
No, but I fear you are possibly just missing a joke there.
No, I know. I get the joke. It's so annoying. I'm like, I'm sorry. We just talked like about $7 million in business, and now you're doing that. Cut it out, please. Like,
yeah.
It's too much. Okay. I can't, my brain needs to be siloed. Okay. I just can't handle that version of the internet. I cannot. It goes over my head. It makes me look at you differently. I mean it. Cut it out. Okay. We're all too old for this.
I agree. You are too old for that.
Yes, I am. Like, if you were born, okay, let's give it a timestamp. Like, if you were born after 95, I think, or before 95, right? Hold on, let me do math. Okay, if you were born before 95, please don't do that. I wanted to make sure you had a little opportunity.
Yeah. We're coming for you.
Yeah.
And the cops are coming. We've caught them.
Please. I mean, like, truly, like, put it to rest. Okay. Find another way to spend time on the internet besides doing that. It is hurting me, and it hurts my brain cells, and I'm a behaviorist. So I actually know how bad that is for my brain. So please, this is an intervention. This is the plea for your well-being. Cut it out. And that's a wrap. That was fun. Why didn't we do this 7 months ago when we proposed we would?
I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know. Yeah, me. And I really feel like it's something that's unique that people need to hear right now, you know? No, 100%. I think that's the point. Like, stop with the bro culture, you know? And the problem is we're emulating that because that's what worked. It's the same thing with Diary of a CEO. It's like his conversations have gone from like thoughtful to mind fuckery. It's like, you're gonna die because of your big toe. And it's like, well,
okay. So I was literally just like talking about this about like because I know you haven't, I mean, not the specific thing, but sort of like this phenomenon of like when things start out really, really well, why they end up going south always. Because we were talking about it with Stranger Things, because we just finished the final episode of that. And Blue is of the opinion that like Stranger Things is best at season 1 and that you should just watch it as like the first season. And I was like, I like don't agree, but I don't disagree, because I think that like a lot of times the pilot season of a TV show or like the first movie of a series is the best one because someone has been brewing up that for years. Yeah. And then once it gets big, then they're like, we need you to churn out that content, baby. And now all of a sudden they don't have 7 years for the second season. They have a year or they have 6 months. And then they need to make it bigger and bigger and bigger in order for people to like, in order for it to reach more people and in order for people to feel more engaged with it. So it becomes less thoughtful and intricate and more just spectacle.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Always go downhill because there's not enough thought being allowed to put into it the way that it was before it was big, back when it was nothing.
Well, yeah, they say, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. And I have a complete parallel to this with regards to brand building, like we've been talking about creative and about business in general. It's like, what do they always say? Well, just start out and put as much in the internet as you can. Post, give value for free. Just keep going for free. And you're giving out your best. And then all of a sudden you get paid.
Yep.
And everything shifts. It does not usually get better. It gets more.
Oh my God. They're all
fragmented.
My 2 favorite content creators, Drew Afwalo and Brittany Broski. I think they're the only people that I probably follow pretty like religiously online. They talk about how before their content was monetized, they had a much larger audience. And then once their content was monetized, then they lost views immediately, or like their accounts would be taken away for no reason and they'd have to like fight TikTok to get back onto it. And then that's why a lot of these bigger creators start going to other platforms, because you need to start diversifying, because you're losing your audience in one place, so they need to find you in another. And then often they start a podcast and they need to find them in a place that's easily monetizable, because where they started isn't anymore, because they don't want to shell out those big bucks for that big creator.
Oh my gosh. I'm looking at what you're saying in real time. And like, that's the thing that drives me the most crazy. Is like, I don't want to build something for years under the guise of like, I'm giving it all to you for free. It's all for you. And then as soon as you monetize, you have the same ethos externally, but you know, the profit motive is actually just internal now. It's like, I just can't do that. I guess that's why I'm willing to go slower and like throw a lot more spaghetti at the wall and try new things. But like, I'm actually going to go deeper on both of those creators. If you don't mind, just shoot me their names to make sure like what I looked up was correct, because that's the thing I think that no one is talking about when I'm talking to people who are running perfectly good businesses, but they're not necessarily at 3,000% growth year over year, whether that's a creator or like an in real life business owner. You know, what I often find is like, whether it's brick or mortar or digital, there's some standard that we're holding ourselves to, and that standard is not real. And it's actually why I did the growth operating model. It's like to help people to see like you can have optionality. You can grow something that maybe will exit one day, but that is also profitable. So you can stop being a sacrificial lamb to whatever you're building and have something that's much more fundamentals optimized. It's much more approachable from day one, which means you can live a good life. You can be yourself and you don't have to sell your soul. And like, we need that level of authenticity to say, wait a second, it may not even be the thing that you want. Like the payout may not be worth it. The lack of engagement, the depth of the community changing may actually not be worth it if you slowed down enough to think about it and say, that's not the level of growth that I actually want. I want the growth that I can live with myself, that I can make changes in my life, that I can move to another country. Like I hear these things all the time, but then no one's building for optionality. That's why I've been so passionate about this model and manuals. Like the model has been implemented for 20 years, but writing it all out, I'm almost taking too much time. I know that won't shock you, on like perfecting everything I say around it, because if I'm not there to help with implementation, right? That's the hardest thing about kind of giving a model or a manual, is like, I need to help people to see all the different paths and why it goes wrong so they can prevent that, you know? But that means I have to be so thoughtful about option A, option B, option C, option D. And it's hard. Like that's been the hardest thing about this. It's like, that's actually not my trade. My trade is growing from great to better. Writing it all out is usually very specific based on the needs of an individual business. We templatize, but we use kind of the same fundamentals. So having something that's both broad and depth is the thing that's keeping me up to, you know, up to speed, or what's it saying, keeping me up at night right now. But like what you just said is what more people need to realize.
And I think a lot of people think that, like, because I think for me, I can't be the only person who has this thought, is like I see someone like skyrocket to fame, and then like they're asked about how they got there. It was like years and years and years of like grinding and hustling and working, whatever. And then once they get there, they're like, well, now I want to slow down. And so for me, it's like, okay, so maybe like someone who's not willing to like completely dedicate their entire life to just this one thing and not like really have any vacations or have any job longevity or like have anything other than whatever this idea of success that they're working towards is. Like what I'm hearing is I have to absolutely 100% dedicate myself to the thing that I want to get to before I can get to it and then live. And that has never appealed to me.
Yes.
Because I think that like having another option of like, no, like you can work towards something and you can be successful at it. And you can also like be a person while that's happening is something that I don't think that like I've ever seen anyone do and then talk about, if they have done it at all. Like it's always been like, yeah, for a really long time, I was really miserable because I was working towards this one thing. And I really felt like I had to give my entire energy to this one thing. And now I'm in therapy because I've been working towards this one thing so much. I forgot how to take care of myself. But luckily, I can afford to take care of myself now, thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp. Like it's every single time.
That everything is a brand opportunity. Everything is like a plot twist to the thing that you're really trying to do. Wow, that was good. I think BetterHelp should sponsor this and give you what you deserve.
Thank you. But like, yeah, I had to like hurt myself in some way in order to get the success that I have so that I could now do repair and slow down and be a normal person. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that first part. Actually, I think like whatever that success isn't worth whatever turmoil I have to experience to get it.
Exactly. And the thing is, I think what really messes it up for me is that then it's like productized. Like you said, like that now BetterHelp has sponsored the conversation that you can even use in the glow up. You know what I mean? Like I get it. Everyone needs to make their money. They need to, you know, create their needs and pay for those.
Like I do want to be successful, but like not at the expense of myself.
No, not, I always call it growth at all costs. It can't be that. And actually, thank you for this. This actually gives me like clarity that I'm not crazy for taking so long to perfect this manual, because there's an archetype that actually speaks to what you're talking about, the creative, multi-passionate. And it talks about having optionality to like do multiple things, have different types of jobs, have something that may be more entrepreneurial or enterprising, and something that pays the bills that you don't have to.
Like I go crazy telling people that like I am a bar manager and an actor, and I'm working on getting like wine certifications, and I just did like a hotel and restaurant management certification, but I also like went to musical theater school. And they're like, okay, so like what do you want to do? I'm like, both. I don't like both until one is the thing I survive off of. And like honestly, like I take either. I'm more passionate about like acting, but like I'm also passionate about doing something that gives me the funds to do the acting for free.
I think you're quite passionate about making them mocktails and cocktails too.
Yeah,
so
like they're both like creative things. They're just both like creative things in different ways. So I just found a creative thing that will fund me while I do the creative thing that doesn't fund me yet. And like what I want to do is both of those for as long as I can, or one of those when I get more money from it. Like it's
There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually the most pragmatic way to grow.
Yeah.
Versus I have this heart to do this thing that doesn't make any sense. I'm going to put all of my eggs in that one basket and hope and pray and ask the universe and, rub on my wishing stones and all the freaking things and call it in.
So valiant. And I think that makes a good story, but I don't think it's like actually what will cause you any growth. But then I think the thing that like I run into a lot is when I am talking to someone who's like involved in either one of the fields that I'm involved in, they think that I'm not actually passionate about the field that I'm in because I'm involved in something else. And I'm like, well, no, if I give up, wine and cocktail education, then I lose my money for acting. But if I give up acting, then I lose joy. Like it's not like one,
not either or.
Yeah, it's like I need both of these things right now.
Yeah,
in order
when Elon had multi-passionate interests, no one said anything. Even when they tried to stir that pot, motherfucker came back with $1 trillion payday to go back to his business because they were like, it's okay if you like space and autonomous vehicles and government politics. Like nobody had any issues with it. But the second that you do it, you're unfocused and you may not be a
celebrities all the time. Rihanna was she was an actress, she was a singer. Now she runs a makeup company, and Selena Gomez did the same thing, and so did Millie Bobby Brown, and so is Lily Reinhart. And no one's calling them unfocused; they're calling them smart businesswomen. So it's like, well, just because I don't have their name, but I'm using their tactics, means that I'm not as focused as they are. Just because you saw them first as a celebrity instead of an everyday person working at Crate and Barrel, who then got cast on Riverdale and is now living. Like she was both.
No, I think let's make sure we talk about this again. This is part of the problem that's driving some of the things we talked about today. It's like we ultimately obsess over and kind of we vilify the highlight reel and the upside, and we ignore the messy middle, and we don't give a fuck where people came from anymore. So like we say we're all about insert thing, but actually what we're all about is whatever notable person makes it popular. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
it's so funny. It's like, not to bring up Heated Rivalry again, but I'm going to bring it up again. One of the actors on that show worked at a pretty popular restaurant called like The Ordinary Spaghetti or something like that. And people are now going back and like viewing his 5-star reviews that he was mentioned in on Google Review to be like, oh, he was getting 5 stars on here before I viewed him in 5 stars over here. And I was like, yes, like highlight that. This man went from like working as a full-time server to now a celebrity in like 8 weeks. Wow. And like, that doesn't mean that he wasn't just a normal person before then who was balancing a work life and also a creative life.
Right. But we need to highlight that. I think that's exactly what you're saying. Is like, we need to highlight it and then give credit to it. Like not like when he's a celebrity that we find that inciting and want to go back, like celebrate and support him on his glow up, right?
Yes, in the not like mythologize it either.
Yeah.
Like this person has this incredible story where they were working as an
riches. Yeah.
Like no, like this is just like a person's story that like they started in one place and now they're in another place, and it's entirely attainable, and we need to like celebrate the entire trajectory of where they came from and where they are now, not just like be like, oh my God, can you believe that they used to do this thing for minimum wage? Yeah, I can, because they're like,
actually I can. That's most people on the internet right now.
Yeah.
Content creator makes under $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
Boom. Surely, like that's the thing we need to realize. Like all the faking and all the making, there's a lot in between.
Yes.
We need to realize that. So for ourselves, I think, to know what growth really looks like. I think that's the future of not burning out, of not hating who we are and what we're trying to become, but actually loving some version of life in between.
Thanks for joining us. Now go out there and turn your success into action. Generational Growth is about helping you in every area that matters: mind, body, business, and self-care. Share this episode on social media and LinkedIn, and feel free to send us where you feel strong and where you need support.
Please note, this content is for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered financial or professional advice. Always consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions. Some of the products and services mentioned may involve financial compensation or partnerships.